Arthur.
Hi, Fernando. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. Thanks so much for sitting down. And actually, well, technically you're my co-host. So thank you for joining me on this podcast of ours, Bite My Shiny Metal podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited. I love you. And I love that we have this fondness for this TV show together. So I'm really glad that we're able to geek out about that. So starting off with the pilot episode, season 1, episode 1, Space Pilot 3000. I want to start by asking, how did you find out about Futurama and what made you fall in love with it?
Well, thank you very much for coming to me with this project. Futurama is definitely one of the first things I think we connected over like 5 years ago when I started doing Frisbee. I consider myself to be an OG Futurama fan. I remember when Fox was advertising it during The Simpsons that, hey, there's this new show from Matt Groening coming. It was right when Fox was doing another wave of animation. I think it actually beats Family Guy. I think it was slightly before Family Guy, but it was around the same time as The PJs, which is another Fox show that's really great. But
oh, yeah.
PJs. I was hooked right in to Futurama. It was right up my alley. I thought it was funny and witty and beautiful at the time. Like, I was really impressed by the animation, even as a kid. And it just kept going from there. Every season I felt more... It was very hard to watch because Fox jumped it around so much. But I was hooked from the beginning.
It was their little pass-around animated show.
Pass-around plaything.
Yeah. I think I fell in love with it. I think it was like the early to mid 2000s when it was on syndication on some channel. I can't remember. I think it was still on Fox at that time. And I just stumbled across it one night. I was like up late watching TV and it was on, and I was like, "What's this?" It's kind of like, it looks kind of cute. The animation reminded me of like Family Guy and Simpsons, and so like I started watching, and I was like, oh my god, this is like a space opera comedy animated series. I already love it, so I kept watching it. And then I remember I would try and watch it every night that it was on, and then I bought like the DVD box sets, and my like collection grew from there, and now it is readily available on Hulu. I watch it on Hulu randomly, like random episodes if I don't feel like watching anything on TV. And I also have the entire series on iTunes, so there's a season or two regularly downloaded on my iPad whenever I'm traveling. It's just something I could like put in, watch, lose myself in. That's great. We have such long roots. So getting into Space Pilot 3000, I wanted to start off with some trivia. The first episode aired March 28th, 1999, written by David Cohen and Matt Groening. I always say Groening, but it's Groening, right?
Yep, gray, like the color.
This one I didn't notice until I looked into it, but Fry is frozen holding a lowbrow beer from 99, but in later episodes throughout the series, he's seen drinking the same brand of beer, which means that brand has been around for 1,000 years now.
And I did not realize that until I read these notes earlier this morning, and my jaw dropped. So we're 5 minutes into this project, and we're already learning new things.
It's like the little things. Notable guests this episode include Dick Clark and Leonard Nimoy, who voiced themselves. Yes, the hand thing. In the Head Museum, midway through the episode, several famous heads make cameos, including Johnny Carson, Lucille Ball, Ed Begley Jr., David Duchovny, and as you noted, there's a plot hole here, because later in the series, Calculon reveals that he is David Duchovny in the episode titled The Honking, which I didn't put those two together until you called this note out, and I was like, wait a minute, he does say he's David Duchovny.
There are actually a couple plot holes in this episode. One that I'm very much looking forward to pointing out, but yeah, it's so great the heads they get in, and that they're already doing the rapid fire jokes in the animation style was something I noticed right away. Because in '99, you're a year removed from the Bulls' last run, so Dennis Rodman would still very much be top of mind. And
yeah, it's There's also Gillian Anderson, Liz Taylor, like you said, you had to throw that in there, 5-time NBA champion Dennis Rodman, Billy Corgan, Barbara Streisand, and Matt Groening himself. In the opening credits, when Planet Express ship is flying through New York, you could see various members of the cast, not just the main cast, but also secondary characters like Kif and Zap, flying through the tubes. French, this is one of my favorite comments, or notes. French became a dead language in the 1,000 years that Fry was frozen, because when they're counting down to the new millennia at the end of the episode, when they go to France, they're actually saying 7 in English and not in French. And this is also confirmed in Season 2, Episode 15, where the professor is showing Cubert around the lab. He says that this is his universal translator, but it's broken, and it only translates into a dead language. And when the professor says hello, the machine spits back, bonjour.
Bonjour.
And it's so funny because, like, they run with this, and as you noted in a later episode, it's in, like you said, the Deep South, when Amy is expressing her disgust at the professor. Oh, Amy expresses her disgust at the professor when he says that she looks like a cheap French harlot. And isn't her response like... French? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that very kind of French.
Yeah. I just wish that there was, like, a little, like, tidbit somewhere in the series where they explain what happened to the French language, and also why France became, or like the French culture became a lot of people's least favorite. Because, like, the Eiffel Tower is still there, is it not? Like,
it's still there, and it's there, and it's floating when you see it.
Yeah.
They installed hover drones on the Eiffel Tower.
At the beginning of the episode, when Fry is having his beer in the in the applied cryogenics lab, if you look closely enough, Nibbler's shadow is under the chair, pushing his chair backwards. And the first couple of times I've seen the pilot, I didn't notice this until I read it somewhere, and I went back and watched the pilot again, and I saw Nibbler's shadow. The details.
And it's a split, it's a blink and you'll miss it. You have to be looking for it because he's only on screen for a split second, as you see my dog's backside.
We love it.
It's there's more on our OnlyFans coming soon. There's so many visual gags and details packed into this episode, but with Nibbler, yeah, you have to be looking for it because he's right there, and it's just his shadow, and then it cuts to Fry falling into the tube. And I love that how when his chair hits the ground, he ends up doing a perfect somersault, so he's standing up in the tube as the door closes on him.
Last fun fact, Amy, Zoidberg, and Hermes were the only main characters that are considered the main characters of the series that do not appear in the pilot episode. And I didn't realize that maybe until, like, a couple of times watching it, but the premiere really focuses on, I guess, like, the main 3, and also the professors. So you could say, I guess, like, the main 4 of the series, but also, like, the main 3 that, like, every episode revolves around. Like, we have episodes that, like, don't revolve around Amy or Hermes, but, like, we still see them interacting with the crew on a day-to-day basis, but other than that, like, it's the main 3, like the 3 Musketeers. So
yeah, one of the things I really love about this episode, and as someone who's watched a lot of television, I think this pilot episode does a really good job of introducing you to the Holy Trinity of Bender, Fry, and Leela, and then kind of fitting in the 4th core 4 member of the cast, because I do think in a lot of ways the professor is the 4th biggest character overall after those because it's Fry's show with a lot of Bender and a ton of Leela.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor, I think, is the biggest character of the remaining cast, and I think this show does a really nice job of weaving those 4 together in a natural way, because the professor's set up quite well in his 2 or 3 minutes of screen time, because you don't meet him until, like, the very end.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until rewatching it earlier today, and I was like, oh, there's like 4 or 5 minutes left in this episode, and they finally go meet up the professor.
He has maybe 15 or 16 lines, and you get a really good idea of who he is right away. Of the, can we have some money? Oh my, no, without missing a beat. Yes, and a warning to our audience. I am definitely that guy that thinks he can do all of the impressions, so I'll probably nail about half of them completely. The other half will be 50-50, so I apologize in advance.
But the ones that you nail, spot on.
Right, yeah. No, 50% of the time, it works 100% of the time. No problemo.
Yeah. Before we get into the plot of the episode, the opening title card in this episode is just quote-unquote in color. We were briefly discussing before we started recording that the first couple of episodes, the title cards are a little but we think it's just because the episodes or like the series was really just trying to like find their footing. Even if like the entire season was already recorded by the time they released it, I think like the creators were definitely like getting into their groove of let's make these funnier. Let's get real with these. Let's get like very topical. A lot of them were kind of topical. But also I think this one's also kind of topical in itself because like 99, there was still stuff. Well, I don't think there was stuff in black and white, but 99, there was still like the new things coming out on TV.
Yeah, I always thought of those as kind of the finishing details of the show where, you know, you're trying to get everything else together from the script and the dialogue to the animation and the actual plot to make sure it all fits together. I think we also, with those title cards, we tend to remember the ones, like, I think my personal favorite is the one that was after they were canceled. That was, Avenge Us! Yeah. So you get some stingers and zingers, some clunkers and junkers, but it's really great. The show managed to set up so much about itself in the first episode.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to gush over this episode. I'm going to gush over most episodes.
Please do.
Especially in the first season. I think the first season is really, really strong and does a really good job. But what I wasn't expecting was for them to change it every episode, and I was pleasantly surprised.
I think it's one of those things that I simply adore in an animated series where animators take the time not only to like they're giving us new episodes every week on like a regular basis, but I also can appreciate that they give us a different title card every episode, similar to how American Dad, another favorite show of ours, similar to how American Dad.
You're about to say Roger's costumes, and that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, so I was going to say two things. I was going to say Roger's costumes and the newspaper gag when Stan picks up the newspaper every morning when he's singing Good Morning USA. Both things are always different. Actually, the newspaper one, total tangent, but talking about American Dad, the newspaper one is a gag that's been different every single episode. However, Roger doesn't start wearing costumes until season 2 or 3. I could be wrong. It's like later.
There's with the American Dad opening credits, another show I've watched way too many times. Yeah, it took them a while to figure it out. Obviously, it's easier to draw Roger in a costume than it is to write something funny every week.
Yeah.
So that's why they phased it out. And of course, as far as I know, in animation, this originated with the Simpsons couch gag, as so much from animation comes directly from the Simpsons. But, you know, if you go back, I'm sure Rocky and Bullwinkle did weird stuff and other cartoons in their time.
I believe it, yeah. It's been a decade and a half since I've watched Rocky and Bullwinkle, but I fully believe it. In my head, I always credit The Simpsons as, like, the main progenitors of, like, a lot of things that happen in sitcoms, even animated sitcoms nowadays, so...
Yeah.
Okay, getting into the plotline. So the pilot opens on our pizza delivery boy, Philip J. Fry, playing a video game before losing and being sent out on his next delivery to applied cryogenics. En route, he runs into his girlfriend Michelle in a cab with another man, where she promptly dumps him before driving off. Riding his bike, Fry keeps muttering to himself, I hate my life, I hate my life, I hate my life, until he arrives to the cryogenics lab where he parks his bike and it briefly gets stolen as he walks into the lobby of the building. When he walks into the lab on the 64th floor, he starts to look for icy wiener before realizing that he's been duped, which I feel like if it's taken him this long, that should already tell us more than we need to know about Fry.
I always thought at this point in my life, I'd be the one making the prank calls. And he's like, I think he's canonically like 26 or 27 when he gets frozen.
I think so. He's like around, he's definitely mid-20s.
Yeah, he's very much Gen X when he gets frozen. Yeah.
Sitting down in a chair, he balances on his two back legs and cracks open a beer before saying, "Here's to another lousy millennium." We're shown the entire world counting down, and when Fry blows a party horn at 1, a shadow that we later learn is Nibbler pushes Fry's chair and he falls backwards into a cryo chamber. It activates and freezes Fry for 1,000 years, where in the background we see the planet repeatedly destroyed by invading aliens and rebuilt while Fry waits in stasis. After watching this episode, I tried to Google if there were like canonical dates on when aliens destroyed Earth both times, and I could not find anything. So I like to think that they destroyed Earth sometime in the mid-21 or 2200s. But also, I was laughing, I wrote that in my notes, that I was laughing at the fact that when civilization was rebuilding itself, they went back to medieval times, and they rebuilt castles. And in my head, I was like, but we already know how to build cities and all these other inventions. Why are we going back to the medieval times? And then it briefly gets destroyed again. I'm going to say less than 100 years later by more invading aliens. This time they got it right because they actually built New York that does not get destroyed. Yeah.
And I was always struck by the fact, how is it that Fry's building doesn't get touched at all? Because his building was in central New York.
I always think that too.
And there's a fan theory that Disenchanted takes place in between the times when the aliens attack and come back, because of the animation. There's similarities in the animation styles of the castles. So I mean, obviously that's a modern fan theory since Disenchanted started in 2017, I guess.
Sounds right.
But there's always crossover with the Matt Groening shows. The Matt Groening cinematic universe will not, of course, let anyone go.
Was it MGCU? Some notes I wrote down some notes for this first section, but if you listen carefully, when the episode starts and it shows the little space animation of Fry playing the game, it sounds to me like the first couple of notes that are played in the episode are almost similar to the same beginning notes to the Next Generation theme song, where it's the soft piano medley that's playing. I heard it and it was so... Yeah, it sounded so reminiscent to Next Generation that I was like, this has to be just a slight play on a futuristic show. So I thought that, I'm going to believe that, and I thought it was cool. I mentioned earlier... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, as a huge Star Trek fan, and The Next Generation being probably the only show I've ever seen more times than Futurama, there are so many Star Trek winks in it, outside of the obvious ones of the Door and Leonard Nimoy. But there are so many nods to, in particular, the original series. Which I noticed right away, and I was like, oh my god, this show's literally made for me. So yeah, there's tons of Star Trek worship in this show, which is a very high reason why I love Futurama.
Very good. The Nibbler shadow under the desk, it's like you said, a blink and you miss it thing. The first couple of times I've seen the pilot, I missed it until I read it that it was there, and I was like, oh my god, it is there. I always just blink and I miss it. I was going to say, it's kind of funny how they rebuilt castles again. I always think, why do we go back to castles? We learned that we could do better, but whatevs. In 2999, Fry is released from his cryo chamber and wakes up on New Year's Eve, where, after stumbling out of the cryo chamber, he looks out the window in shock, realizing that he's now in the future. He begins to lament the loss of his family and friends, but quickly dismisses the sadness with a loud cheer. Terry, who we see randomly throughout the series, he's an applied cryogenics employee, welcomes him to the future and escorts him to the Fate Assignment Officer, where we meet the beautiful, one-eyed Taranga Leela. I did not know that was the title of her job. I I don't think I ever thought about what her title was. And
It's
then
on
I
a
read it
sign
and I was like,
right
oh.
outside her door.
Again, blink and I miss it. I'm probably fiddling on my phone half the time that if something's ever obvious and I say I missed it, I was most likely fiddling on my phone. Explaining that the date is December 31st, 2999, Fry confesses that the 20th century held nothing for him and feels optimistic about the future. After an encounter with the probulator, Leela informs Fry he has a many times great nephew, Hubert J. Farnsworth. Informing Fry that everyone gets assigned a career chip, Leela tells Fry that he'll be a delivery boy again, and not wanting to go back to his old job, he runs away. Giving chase, Leela ends up falling into one of the cryo chambers herself, which automatically activates and sets itself for 1,000 years, but Fry, being the kind soul that he is, sets it for 5 minutes and runs away. Walking around New York and seeing how much it's changed, he decides to call his great-nephew and gets in line to use what he thinks is a phone booth. In line, he meets Bender, a shiny gray robot, and is joined in the booth by Bender because he says he's in a hurry and wants to share the suicide booth with him. After accidentally activating the machine, Fry pushes Bender aside and they both survive. A few things here.
I want to take this opportunity to say, as of right now, the Futurama reboot has been announced. It is coming back to Hulu. We are waiting on one John DiMaggio to re-sign with the cast. So
yes.
we have our
Saints Bender.
We have our Santo Bender candle that we are keeping and putting all due praise that Johnny D will join our favorite space crew.
Yes. A funny thing that I had noticed that I never realized before, when Fry is speaking with Leela and she tells him the date, and she says it's 2999, and Fry, realizing how long it's been, he says, "Oh my God, I've been frozen for a million." What did he say? He says, "I've been frozen for a million years." Yeah, he says a million years. I wrote that down specifically, and then LOL right next to it because that was the first time I caught that, and I was like, another thing that tells us that Fry probably isn't the brightest in the bunch, but you gotta love him. He's a sweet soul. He turned Leela's frozen to time and stasis to 5 minutes instead of leaving it at 1,000 years. So hints at he is a kind soul. He's not the brightest, but he's kind.
I love him wandering around New York. They both. Speaking about what the show set up, they set up that Fry's going to be an absolute moron, but he's the sweetest doofus you could ever want around.
Bless his heart.
Bless his heart. And I love when he gets into the Crosstown Express, because he's just Crosstown Express, and it launches him out. There's an incredible amount of detailing as he's whipping through the tubes.
The three-eyed fish when he's underwater.
The three-eyed fish. There's a mechanical fish.
I never caught that.
When he's walking around before he gets in the tube, there's a nudist couple that's walking around. They're clearly naked under what they're wearing, but what they're wearing is this see-through plastic with black bars, a la Madonna in the sex video, or Valentina's Runway when she did Madonna, which I think is great faux future fashion. And then when he gets launched out of the tube into the wall, and the guy just turns around and goes, "Tourist."
It's one of those, that moment is one of those things where, I know it's a cartoon and it's not based in reality and everything is fake, but I always want to, understand how things work, and then I always wonder, do they, manually spin themselves in that, exit orb? Do they do something and then it spins them so that they land on their feet? What did Fry not do that shot him into the wall?
Well, and I love it because they very deliberately, one of the gags is there are two people that go before him, and they both come swooping in, stop, and there's very clearly a long pause. So there's very clearly an ability to stop in the thing and get repositioned.
Okay, yeah.
Because the first girl comes out and she's got she's got pigtails, but she's got a third one coming out the top of her head.
They do something in there because there definitely is a pause, whereas Fry just goes right through it.
Fry just goes flying into the wall.
Oh my God. Joining Bender at a bar, he explains that he was trying. Bender explains that he was trying to kill himself because he found out he was programmed to be a girder bender for suicide boots, and Fry convinces him to abandon his plans of suicide, and the two become friends. The start of this best friendship that we see throughout the series.
And the biggest plot hole, I think, in the entire show, when they are sitting together at the bar, Fry looks at Bender and says, "Why do you need alcohol?" To which Bender says, "I don't need to drink," which we know is not true. Bender literally needs alcohol to survive. So,
do you think the robots know this? That they need alcohol to survive? Or maybe just Bender needs alcohol to survive? Or, well, something happens later in the episode. Maybe that reprogramming that's going to come up.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Let's get to that.
Maybe, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Leela is released from the cryo chamber and yelled at by her boss for losing Fry and forced to continue her pursuit. Spotting Fry...
Shut up, Harry.
Yeah, I heard it and I went, "Shut up, Meg."
Whenever I'm annoyed by a colleague in a work environment, which to any of my colleagues listening to this hasn't been in years, I assure you.
No.
But I always say in my head, "Shut up, colleague, I want to shut up," in that same tone as Katie Seagal. I want to take a moment, shout out to Katie Seagal, one of the absolute comedian legends, a marvelous actress, and just a joy. We are big Katie Seagal fans here.
We love you, Katie.
We love you, Katie. Come to our show.
Meanwhile, Leela's blah blah blah. Spotting Fry and Bender in a local pub, Leela chases them into the head museum where Fry encounters Leonard Nimoy and asks him to do the hand thingy, to which Leonard, says he doesn't do that anymore. And for a brief second, I was like, is this because, like, of the religious, exile of Star Trek fandom that happened? Or
yeah, it's technically against the law.
Or because he doesn't have hands. Because he's just a head in a jar. Or both.
I think what it is that he realized, because it's clear at this point in the future that time travel is a regular thing that happens to a ton of people all the time.
Yeah.
So I think Leonard instantly picks up on, oh crap, this guy's from the past. I'm not going to get him in trouble. I'm just going to be like, I can't do that anymore, son. But we miss you, Leonard. So.
Oh, rip. Leela catches up to them, along with the backup she requested, but the backups start beating up Fry and feeling bad for him. Leela helps them escape into a back room while she distracts the police, Bender stating he's unable to bend the bars in the window due to the programming preventing him from aiding in their escape. He turns around to walk away and briefly gets electrocuted by a light bulb that his antenna hits. And after coming out of the shock, it seems to have changed his programming and allows him to bend the bars to let them escape. However, when Bender bends the bars, his arms fall off, which is kind of a funny gag because it's like I always think about how he has these super extending arms, but they just pop off like plug-in sockets, which is kind of funny to me. But also what we were saying earlier, the part where he gets electrocuted by the light bulb, it could be the genesis of this Bender that we know now, the one that needs beer to survive, the one that is able to do all these things that a normal robot shouldn't, like the free will that he has, well, somewhat free will that he has. I wonder if it came from that light bulb moment. I always forget that happens until I read it, and I was like, oh, that does happen. Maybe that did change him. Maybe that's why we have Bender.
He goes immediately from "you're full of crap, Fry" to "you make a persuasive argument, Fry." Yeah. What I love is that once his arms fall off, it goes to commercial. It comes right back. His arms are putting themselves back into his body, and Fry just asks, "How did you do that?" I think I understand how it happened. I think one arm was lying down, picked up the other arm by the wrist, and that way it's tall enough to just plug back into Bender so you can grab the second one. But yeah, I when I was first introduced to this theory, I didn't know what to think. As I've rewatched the show, I believe that Bender, as we know and tolerate, is born in this moment.
I think so. He's very at every moment we see him up until that moment, it's like a totally different Bender from when from after he gets electrocuted. So that low-hanging light bulb, which it's the future. They still have lame things like low-hanging light bulbs in a broom closet.
Yeah, it wasn't even an LED or a smart bulb.
No.
Like, what kind of gross poverty basement were they in that's like that?
A museum basement. Low funding.
We can hide it here. It's free on Tuesdays.
Oh my god. Fun fact, if you look up the feature date of December 31st, $29.99, it's a Tuesday. Did you know that? I had to look that up.
I did not know that. I read it. That's incredible.
I read that fact and I had to look it up. December 31st, $29.99 is a Tuesday.
That's insane.
These creators, man. All right. Fleeing into the underground ruins of old New York, Fry begins to again realize that everyone he knows is now gone and becomes a little sad before Leela catches up to them. Giving in, Fry resigns himself to once again be a delivery boy and readies himself to have his career chip implanted, but instead, Leela removes hers and declares that she's quitting. They finally track down the professor, who confirms that Fry is his uncle, and after giving a tour of his delivery company, Planet Express, the group is shocked to hear the police knocking on the door, having tracked them down. Planning to escape in the Planet Express ship, the planet begins to count down to the year 3000, and taking off at the stroke of midnight, the crew on the Planet Express ship are able to avoid the police cannons by cloaking themselves under the fireworks celebrating the new millennium. It's this is another moment where we see everybody counting down, and France says 7 in plain English.
There's a lot of English in the second countdown. Except for the aliens, I believe the exact number is. It's because it cuts back to the lab, and you have Tara going 5.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love that. Despite the fact that it's 1,000 years in the future, the new New York Police Department are still using overwhelming force for the slightest inconvenience they face as those who are sworn to protect and serve us. It's nice that the new New York PD is same old.
There is that moment where Leela beats them up because as like a distraction to let Fry and Bender get away. But they said, Leela's like, you're beating them up for no reason. And I forgot the officer's name. Not URL, the other one. But he said, the human police officer, he says something along the lines of like, but that's what we do. We're peace officers.
It's their job. We're peace officers. And what sets Leela off is that they call her Big Nose.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody makes fun of my nose.
He says something like, big nose, one-eyed alien or big nose, one-eyed woman. And she says, nobody makes fun of my big nose.
It's like, I think it's keep your big nose out of this eyeball or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Nobody makes fun of my nose.
It shows you she's very secure with her eyeball, not her appearance. We know she doesn't like her big nose.
It also goes to show she's very secure, kicking the crap out of anybody that gets in her way.
Oh, yeah. She's not afraid to beat anybody up. When she calls for backup, she says, this is Officer 1BDI. And if you write it out and say it back to yourself, it's 1BDI. 1BDI.
1BDI.
Yeah.
Well, I love that Earl and Smitty are right behind her.
Yeah.
She says, I need backup right away. And they say, we'll be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah. When Fry and Bender climb into the sewer and end up in old New York, I just think it's very American about how instead of clearing the land and building anew, they simply just throw everything under the rug and build everything on top of it. They built like a brand new layer of land just to build new New York on there. I was like, that's so American. We're so lazy. We can't even clear the old ruins. We're just gonna build right over it.
Yeah, so like, is the new New York sewer above old New York, or is the new New York sewer under old New York? So you've got new New York on top, and you can tell because my little pop socket is the building.
Yeah.
But so then underneath it, is that the ruins of old New York, and then you have the new New York sewer system, or
I'm gonna say that it's the other way around because as we see in later series. When they're visiting, like, the mutants and Leela's parents and all that, you could see, like, sewage pipes up above, but there's also sewage pipelines, like, below. So I think majority of the pipelines are, like, up above, but then there are ones that, like, go down. But like in a lot of the episodes where they're underground, there are like pipes all above them. Because then I remember like a scene where like the crew is walking to Leela's parents' anniversary party, and like a piece of sewage that involves like a half-eaten fish falls from a grate above them, and Zoidberg eats it. He like catches it with his mouth and eats it. So I think there's like mostly up above there, but then also some at the bottom for like the mutants. But
well, there's clearly something under where the mutants are, and we'll get to this episode. But in one of the sewer episodes, one of the mutants ends up saying, after they flush something down one of their toilets, and it's a mirror of a conversation that the Planet Express crews had earlier about some people say it goes into a sub-sewer system, but that's just a suburban legend. Yeah. So they hint at stuff under the sewer system, but they never explore it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's just like the sewer system of like old New York, and then they just built like a new sewer system for new New York.
And there's got to be tons of shit under old New York. So.
Ugh. Yeah, who knows what survives 2 alien invasions in 1,000 years?
Oh, good old American feces.
Oh God. Before going to see the professor, Fry and Leela have a touching moment where they briefly hold hands, realizing that they are both alone individually, not together, but like alone individually. They realize this, and they have like this brief connection where they start to hold hands, and are quickly interrupted by Bender putting his hand on top of theirs. And when they both look at him, wondering what happened, he says, "Oh, I just wanted to be included," or something like about not wanting to be left out.
I just wanted to be part of the moment.
Yeah. It's cute. But
I think that's... sorry.
I was just going to say, it's like the start of their like budding feelings for each other.
It's one of my favorite moments in the whole thing, because in that it's a split second where they're holding hands, and you get like half a beat of, oh, this is really sweet, before Bender's hand comes in and you get the dialogue again. But in those 2-3 seconds, they really do set up the dynamic between Fry and Leela, and then Fry and Leela and Bender very well for what we're going to get over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, and then the last episode note I had was goodbye, French. So glad the language I learned in school is now dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Realizing the 3 of them are now fugitives without their career chips, Professor Farnsworth reveals he has kept the career chip of his old crew. And it's funny because if you look at the envelope the chips are in, the envelope is clearly marked contents of Space Wasp's stomach. And
which
invites
we will
them
encounter later.
Yeah. And so he invites them to join his company as delivery people. When Fry learns his job will be, quote-unquote, transporting cargo safely to its destination, unquote, essentially a delivery boy, Fry is overjoyed to now be a delivery boy because he'll be a delivery boy in space. And the camera zooms out to show the Planet Express ship flying off into space. And that's where the pilot ends. It's so much of this episode sets up, obviously, the entire series, but I just love that the envelopes of his old crew is marked Space Wasp's stomach, because we do encounter that later on. But also there's so many, like, jokes from the professor, or just, like, quips from the professor about his old crew having died on this one mission, or having gotten hurt on this one mission, because he has such, like, care, like, he just doesn't care about his crew. Because he's always sending them off on these missions, and he always talks about how they didn't come back, or one person didn't make it, or something like that. And here he just has contents of the old crew's career chips in an envelope.
Yeah, how did he find the wasp that ate his old crew? How did he get the chips back? That's yeah, Farnsworth is. Farnsworth is adorable from a distance. The closer you get, the nastier it all becomes.
I mean, he's 140? 150.
Well, it varies because he says he's 160, but he's actually older. But then eventually, when they get into that spa, he ends up being younger, but he's older. And
oh yeah, at the end of the episode.
His age. well, his age varies around. His parents are ancient.
The Sunset Police come for them at 170?
Is that the age?
I forget. It's definitely over 150. But look at that. Advancements in medicine.
Well, it's nice to know we got some kind of healthcare system in what will be America in 1,000. Maybe it takes 1,000 years for America to get a comprehensive healthcare system.
Oh, I'm so glad
you away.
I'm so glad that's what it'll take. They look like they're pretty well taken care of, though, when they get taken away to sunset.
Hey, they're all still alive, so
Just use as batteries, a la Matrix. Except, total tangent, but don't they say in that episode that they found out that humans make poor batteries, so now they just keep them there for, like, I forgot why. They keep them there for some reason.
Yeah, they do. They take a shot at the Matrix over that plot point. Like, I think Leela says pretty directly, "Wouldn't humans make a terrible battery or something like that?"
Apparently, they make good batteries because the batteries in their hover ship die, so they replace them with with the professor's parents. All right, I have some discussion questions. 3, pretty short. What was your favorite scene, moments, or line of this episode?
I think if I had to pick one joke, it would be when Fry, Bender, and Leela are at Planet Express. They're talking to the professor, and then you hear Earl and Smitty say, "Come out with your hands up! We have you partially surrounded." And it cuts to a wide shot of all 4 of them, and Bender literally shits a brick. A brick just falls out. It's so great. Broadly, I love all of the details. There's so many visual gags. I think the animation is striking and beautifully done. But Bender shitting a brick would probably be my favorite.
It's not the first time he does that, right? He definitely does that.
No, not at all.
Definitely does that a few different times. I wonder what, again, me thinking about like a reality-based, me looking for a reality-based answer in an animated sci-fi TV show. How did he shit the brick?
Well, I've always taken a comfort in knowing that the laws of physics do not apply to Bender's chest cavity.
I mean,
like,
where did his arms come from?
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, he's got gears in some episodes, but yeah, no. Bender's stomach, the laws of physics do not apply. So it's a combination replicator, transporter,
frickin'
storage
Poppins
closet, drug evidence locker. Yeah, it's...
And it's also, his chest cavity is also the perfect size for a head jar, as he carries Lucy Liu around with him sometimes.
Yeah, right. He steals heads multiple times.
I think my favorite part of this episode was the brief moment where Fry and Leela hold hands in the ruins of old New York, realizing that they're both alone, but they could be alone together. And I am like fully in love with their relationship from start to finish. So I think like seeing this was like a super cute moment until like the beginning of their on again, off again relationship throughout the series.
They set up the possibility and then leave it alone for quite some time, which is remarkably disciplined, and I think they do it very well.
Yeah, totally. What was your least favorite part?
When Fry lists all of the people he has left behind and forgets Seymour.
Oh my god, that's right. That's my new least favorite part.
And the thing is, it's completely unfair to the episode because we don't know about Seymour yet and all of that. I don't actually. I don't think I have one. I love this pilot. I think it's so great from the very beginning. The literal opening note homage to Star Trek. That it instantly sets up that Fry is miserable. Baits are going out. God. That the poor guy gets his bike stolen instantly. They're really they waste. They're very efficient with their time in this episode too, where you get the instant setup in 99 and he's whisked away really fast. I don't have a least favorite moment, and I know that's a cop out. So hopefully you've got one. What's your least favorite?
I'm gonna be honest. I was thinking really hard about this. I watched this episode again earlier. And I finished up my work day. We had a happy hour. I ran errands and I came back home and I can't think of a part any part that was my least favorite of this episode. Pacing wise, like you said, I think they do such a great job at pacing throughout the episode. Fry's only in the 20th century for the first, like, before it even goes to the first commercial break, because I'm pretty sure he gets frozen and then it goes to commercial after he, like, comes out of stasis and he sees New York, and then it cuts to the first commercial of the episode. And then just, like, everything else happening throughout the episode, pacing was great. I thought line delivery was great. So many, like, smart, like, jokes, hints at all these other things, allusions and all that. I was trying really hard to think, and I just couldn't find anything that was, like, my least favorite. I'm not saying it's a perfect pilot. I don't know if a perfect pilot exists for anything. I'm actually going to pause right there. I think WandaVision has an amazing pilot. It starts perfectly. But I'm not going to go into my love for Wanda Maximoff in this episode because it's a Futurama podcast. But
we are fully Team Wanda here. Fuck up whatever you need to fuck up to get your kids, honey. We are on your side.
We are that meme of, like, woman does something crazy. Her gaze, yes, go off. We stand. Yes.
As she's mowing through all these universes. Doctor Strange is going to be a lot of fun. But anyways, we're here to talk about Futurama.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about a different Disney property.
I just can't think of anything that was my least favorite. I'm sure at, like, some point in the near future, I'm going to think of something that's to be like, you know what, I'm going to call that my least favorite part of the episode, but for now, I don't think I have one. Another question was, actually, you added this question. How many things do you believe this episode set up?
I've talked about a couple of them, but one that I didn't go to. I think this sets up the professor really well too. That you get that he's both hyper competent and just as dumb as Fry sometimes. Where it's like, and this is where I keep my various lengths of wire. And here's how I use them to build my intergalactic spaceship. I think actually, and this is being very generous, but in the escape scene where they run into the Planet Express ship and Fry immediately goes to the console and starts pressing buttons, that's actually something that we'll come back to, where Fry wants to do the right thing, he just doesn't know how, and him actually learning to fly the ship over the course of the show is a plot point. But I love that he ends up ordering a cup of coffee. Yeah.
The sweet thing that he is, he tries to help, and he doesn't know what to do because he's just, as Fry puts it, a kid from the stupid ages.
Yeah, right.
It looks like he hits all the right buttons, but what do we know? But, like, he's so confident, and then you just hear the ping of the coffee maker putting out. Before the camera cut out, my camera cut out, we were just talking about how, the question about how many things did this episode set up for future, and we were talking about, like, Fry being a sweet soul trying to fly the Planet Express ship, and instead he accidentally orders a latte from the coffee maker. So good. But this moment also sets up Leela's outfit, because she takes off her like applied cryogenics jacket, and she has that white tank top that Amy makes fun of her for multiple times.
I never noticed that. You're absolutely right.
She takes off her jacket and she has that white tank top on. Amy refers as her mannish boots. But she does make fun of her outfit. Something about, like, her mannish outfit or something.
Amy and Leela have a very interesting relationship. It feels, I am an only child. I will, shocking to people who know me. But sometimes it feels like their relationship is very sisters who don't quite get along, but are nonetheless still sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love them. And then some other things this episode sets up. The start of Fry and Leela's relationship. The relationship all three of them have as friends, like, the three of them, the main cast. Not the main cast, I hate to say that, but, like, the main three, I should say.
Yeah,
their relationship.
The Holy Trinity and the core four.
Yeah. Yeah, this episode definitely does a great job of, like, setting up a lot that we need to know. And that nibbler moment, that doesn't come back until, like, season 3? Season 4? It takes a couple of seasons for it to come back.
Yeah, it's later on. It's like season 3 or 4. It's the day the Earth stood stupid. And yeah, that's not until like season 3 or 4